So this webinar will be about proofreading. So for a start, I'd like to ask you a question. So I'm putting up a poll where you can click the most appropriate answer. So I'm launching the poll right now, and you will have 30 seconds to click your answer. Thank you very much. And I'm right now showing my presentation, which is quite surprisingly about proofreading in MemoQ. Let me just jump back a little bit to the first screen where the most important piece of information is my email address. So whenever you have a question or a suggestion that occurs to you after the webinar has finished, feel free, please, to write me. About myself, a couple of words. I'm one of those people who actually designed MemoQ originally, and but right now MemoQ actually has grown beyond the scope of one single person. So MemoQ is a tool that is being made by something like 20 people at the same time. So what I want to tell you today is the way MemoQ can be involved in the proofreading process. I'm very cautious here because what MemoQ doesn't give you at the moment is the full proofreading tool set, so to say. This is something that we are very hardly working on, but I cannot tell you more specifics. But if you have any specific suggestions regarding features that might be missing from MemoQ in this department, feel free to write me about that just as well. So first, I'm going to touch on the principles of proofreading regarding MemoQ, so that you will be able to see immediately what is possible and what is not. And then, because proofreading or reviewing, I'm going to use these two terms as synonyms, although I know that in many cases, like in book publishing, for instance, the two things mean completely different things. But what I have observed is that proofreading is used very much in the reviewing sense when it comes to translations and the translation workflow. So I'm going to tell you about the proofreading part when we stay in the system, we stay in MemoQ, and we will implement a MemoQ-based workflow. And then I'm going to move on to scenarios when the proofreading or the reviewing actually is done outside MemoQ. And those are the scenarios, those are the situations where you have to make sure that the result of the reviewing or the proofreading gets back into the system. And I'm going to touch on version control and keeping versions at the end of the presentation. I am talking about the version that is currently available. This is version 4.5 of MemoQ. I'm going to mention features and functionality that is available in version 4.5. So the principles of QA of proofreading or reviewing in MemoQ are implemented by two main features. One of those is the QA. That is sort of an automated process that is designed to spot errors that a machine can spot. But those warnings that you get from a QA also point you to places in the translation where you actually might have to pay attention as a reviewer as well. I'm not going into QA in detail. We have a separate webinar on that, but I'm still eager to see your questions. And I forgot to tell you that actually you can, anytime you feel like it, you can type your questions in the questions pane. I'd rather not provide for spoken questions. I've got two reasons for that. One is that the sound is usually very bad, becomes very bad when people are allowed to ask questions, and sometimes the service is disrupted even. And the other reason is that if you type the questions, they will be on record, and we can look at them later on. So, but other than that, please feel free to type questions in the questions pane anytime. Okay, so back to principles in MemoQ. So one feature you can use is the quality assurance. This is something that works as you type your translation or you are reviewing a translation. The second principal functionality that you have in MemoQ to help you with reviewing is the workflow. If you are running the project manager edition of MemoQ, I wonder how many of you have seen that. I will show you my copy right now. So if you have Translator Pro only, you don't see these boxes here, like Translator Reviewer 1, Reviewer 2. This is where I can assign people to a document, or I can take several documents at one go and assign those documents to multiple people. And this is precisely in place in order to provide for reviewers a reviewing cycle, a reviewing process. Like I can assign a translator, a first reviewer, and a second reviewer to a project, to a document. And then in a MemoQ, if you work in MemoQ as a reviewer, you can get an assignment from a server, or you can get a handoff package. When you use the offline teamwork in MemoQ, you can get a handoff package where you are actually assigned to a document as a reviewer. And then what you get is a sort of finished translation that you have to correct yourself. And then return the translation, either by simply confirming the segments and synchronizing the translations, or by exporting a delivery package if you get a handoff package first. So yeah, reviewing or proofreading is available in MemoQ with certain limitations, and there are ways to overcome those as well. Let me move on, and we will be returning to this part briefly later in the presentation. Well, a very important, I'm making a detour here, a very important aspect of the quality of technical translation, any type of non-literary translation, is consistency. But it is even important in literary translation. But the way MemoQ provides you with are most useful in technical translation. This is something I'm ready to admit. You can check if identical segments are translated consistently. That might or might not be a requirement towards a translation, might or might not be required in case of all sentences. Like if there are short sentences where the meaning depends on the context very much, actually the requirement could be that those sentences must be translated in a different way depending on the context. And you can also check the consistent use of terminology. If you have a term base, MemoQ can spot segments, translation units, where the source text contains some terms from the term base, and the target text doesn't contain the translation from the same term base. And when MemoQ encounters such a segment, it will also give you a warning. So this is something that could be really useful for you. But this is a detour because we have a separate webinar on the QA module. Let's move on to principles. And these are really important things. This is why I put them in red boxes here. Well, you could argue that the purpose of proofreading or reviewing translation is to provide your client with top quality translation, the best quality that is attainable within the time frame or the cost that you are allowed. But it is also in your interest to keep the proofread versions. Like, if you go out of the system to do proofreading because of the limitations of the way you can do proofreading within MemoQ or within any other translation tool, you might, well, actually, those present are always accepted, of course, but many translation teams, many translation companies simply forget to recycle proofread text, recycle reviewed translations back into your translation memories, so that later on, when you recycle translations, you get the reviewed or proofread versions and not those that were submitted directly by the translators. And in order for you to be able to grade your translators or provide feedback, you always need to keep the non-proofread versions to those that were submitted by the translators and existed before the reviewer started working on them. So these are two very important aspects here. And I'm going to return within the presentation. I'm going to return to those and give you ways to deal with this. Okay, let's move on. Let's first stay in the system. In MemoQ, you can take a bilingual file. You can take a project, you can check out a project, an online project from a server, and review the translation, correct the translation. Well, what you get from the translator is confirmed segments. The confirmed segment is indicated by a single tick mark, a single green tick mark. But if you work as a reviewer or a proofreader, the segments you confirm will get two double tick marks. And if you work in an online project as a second reviewer, I'm going to show that to you right away. Yes. Then the segments you confirm cannot be overwritten by translators anymore. This is how MemoQ makes sure that the versions, different versions of the same translator just do not mix up. So what the project manager gets in the end, what the client gets in the end, will be the proofread translation. But this is only true for online projects that are actually run on a server in a central way. This applies both to fully online projects where the documents live on the server, and there's another type of online project in MemoQ version 4.5 that is called the online project with desktop documents, where the documents live on the machine of the translator or the reviewer. But even then, MemoQ senses the changes and indicates them, and doesn't let the translator change what the second reviewer has confirmed. Yes. But if you are not working in an online project, you work on your own, or you work on an offline setup with a handoff package, you can still distinguish between segments that were confirmed, well, quote-unquote, only by a translator, or that were confirmed by a proofreader. And when you start working on a bilingual file, let's suppose you receive a bilingual file that you have to work on as a reviewer. First you go to Project Home and Settings, and then you click a checkbox that is called User is Proofreader. And from that point on, whatever you confirm will become proofread instead of simply confirmed. That means that MemoQ will mark those segments that you confirm with a double tick mark. And this is how you can filter for segments, for instance, if you wish to. And this is also possible in the Translator Pro edition. So if you are for instance, if you are a freelancer and you get a bilingual file to proofread, you can simply import it by import bilingual documents. That is a command in the translations pane. And then you can go here, like Project Home and Settings, check User is Proofreader, and then go back to the document. And from that point on, every segment you confirm will become proofread. Now, but still, if you export this bilingual document and it gets back to the translator will be able to overwrite those segments that you marked as proofread, because this is not an online project. And but if it's a team project, either on a server or in an offline setup with handoff packages and delivery packages, you can assign documents to proofreaders. This is something I have shown you before, and and then you just select a reviewer 2 for each document, because reviewer 1 is like a peer reviewer for a translator. At least in my practice, my experience, we have used it that way. Like a reviewer, the first reviewers were also translators, and we were using it like, let's suppose I am working together with István on this translation. So whatever is translated by me gets reviewed by István, and whatever is translated by István will get reviewed by myself. And there is also a second reviewer, which is Gábor in that, which is Gábor in that sense. Okay, just a demo effect. So this is what I wanted to show you. So the translator-reviewer 1 relationship is very much like peer reviewing. We review each other. And there is no precedence between reviewer 1 or translator. But the second reviewer is always considered in MemoQ as the master reviewer. So reviewer 2 has decisive privileges on the translation. And this is how you keep track of this in MemoQ when you stay in the system. But and in earlier versions that was very linear. Like when the translator did his job, the document is passed on to the reviewer 1 if there is one. If not, it is automatically passed on to reviewer 2, and there is no way back. Now in MemoQ 4.5, there's a way to go back to an earlier stage. When there is an online project, and this is strictly with online projects, you can return the document to an earlier stage. Like if you are reviewer 1, you can write comments, make some changes, but then write comments into the document. You can do this in MemoQ. Let me just show you quickly. If there is a translation, let me just insert a couple of translations, but I want to call your attention to this this bubble here. If you double click it, you can add a comment to that segment. So you can type all sorts of comments in that and then return the document to the previous actor, for instance the translator. A reviewer 2 can return the document to the reviewer 1, or a translator if there was no reviewer 1, and a project manager in an online project. Let me just go into managing an online project. Let me find one. And the project manager can send a document anywhere. Let me find a project that I have created myself. Yes, this is a translation of a book on programming iPhones. And here I get the status of the project, where you see green. That means that phase is finished. Where you see red, that phase is not finished and it's overdue. Where you see blue, that phase has started and it's not overdue yet. Well, if there is no deadline, you don't have to set a deadline here. Is in progress. If it would be gray, if it was gray, it would indicate that it hasn't been started. But then I can change the workflow status to anything, like translation not started, translation in progress or completed. This is because there is no reviewer, first reviewer or second reviewer assigned to the project. But if you have a second reviewer, if you work as a project manager, and if you have a second reviewer, you can, and you get a lot of comments on the translation of specific translators from a second reviewer, you as a project manager can go here, like I'm managing an online project right now, and push back the documents to the translators so that they can have another look. What they have to do is update their projects, open the projects again that they have checked out earlier from the server, and then look at the translation again. And but this is also possible by sending and receiving bilingual documents. So the good old MBDs or XLIF files are still there. So you can export bilingual documents, MemoQ bilingual documents or XLIF. I'm advertising MemoQ bilingual documents or XLIF to stay within the system, because the MBD files, MemoQ bilingual documents, and XLIF files are those that don't lose any information that exists in the internal form of the document, and those can also be used to update the existing documents without any loss of information. Yeah. So this also works with that. And this especially applies to something that I want to show you right now, because if you work as a reviewer, you can look for warnings, you can look for suspicious phrases, like I don't know how much experience you have with that, of that nature at least, but in my experience, some translation mistakes are very, very specific to the translator. So if I see who the translator was, and I suspect that the translator had little time to complete the translation and had no time whatsoever to revisit the translation that he's done, then I already know what types of mistakes I could be looking for, and these could be very pertinent phrases which I can look for in the filter of MemoQ, because let me just switch back to MemoQ briefly. I will close this and return to the document. Like I can filter for the segments that contain specific source phrases or target phrases, not only the status, but I can also go for the comments. So if I'm a reviewer, I go for suspicious phrases, I look for warnings that were inserted by the QA module, and if I'm a translator and the document was returned to me, I look for different things, because I expect the reviewer to insert comments in the document, and then I can filter for the contents of the comments. I'm not restricted to filter for those segments that have some comment. I can also filter for those segments where the comment contains something like, well, in this example, it's segmentation, but for instance, the reviewer could use the word problem when something wrong is spotted in the translation, and the reviewer wants the translator to reformulate the translation or revisit the translation. This could be indicated by a keyword, and the translator might be able to filter for that keyword in the text of the comment. So this is something, again, that is included in MemoQ's apparatus, and that helps the reviewing or the proofreading process. But there is one thing. So to wrap this up, there are ways to do the proofreading within MemoQ, to get the bilingual files out of MemoQ and get them, process them in another copy of MemoQ, and return them to MemoQ in the same form. Or this is something that can be managed by a server-based project. But there's a very important feature that is not present in MemoQ, and that is called track changes or versioning. And to this very reason, some people, including those proofreaders that work for me, well, okay, how can I talk about my experience if I state that I'm not a translation company? I've got another business that is a publishing company, and we translate books on information technology mostly, where we have projects of 10 translators, and we also employ reviewers, proofreaders. But in a book translation process, there is actually three levels of reviewing, and that is different. So this is how I can talk about my experience here. So even some of my proofreaders refuse to work in MemoQ precisely because of the lack of the track changes functionality, and because of the fact they are familiar with the proofreading or reviewing tools in Microsoft Word. So they prefer to work with Microsoft Word, and for this very reason, when designing the appropriate functionality in MemoQ, we had to provide for those people who actually choose not to work in MemoQ, and we had to provide ways of getting the bilingual content out of MemoQ and getting the proofread content back into the same MemoQ project. And there are, well, three formats that you can use, three bilingual document formats that you can use to do proofreading outside MemoQ. That could be XLIF, which is pretty standard. So you can process EXIF files with that are produced by MemoQ with any tool that eats EXIF. Well, Microsoft Word is not one of those. So this is not EXIF is not mainly for proofreading, but rather for interoperating with different tools, and that is another topic that we have a webinar on. But if you go for the two-column RTF or the Trados compatible bilingual doc files, then you are on familiar terrain. Then you are in Microsoft Word. So when you have a bilingual document in MemoQ, you can choose okay, sometimes I have to look at the audience view indicator here. You can choose a Trados compatible bilingual document or the two-column RTF that is specific to MemoQ to export the bilingual contents. And when you choose the two-column RTF, this will be a Word document in principle. You can go for you can select all kinds of options to work with. What should or what shouldn't be included in the table. Let me just jump forward a couple of slides, and then I'm going to jump back. I'm going to I'm waiting till this is displayed for you. Well, 95%, 100%. Okay. If you look at this slide here, you can see a translation grid that is headed by 00Mackie_FM, which is the name of the file. But this is actually a screenshot from Microsoft Word. This is how MemoQ exports the bilingual, the two-column RTF files. This is very similar to the MemoQ translation grid. Its disadvantage is that you don't see the original formatting. You see as much formatting as you would see in MemoQ without the preview. But then you are in Microsoft Word. You can edit the translation. You can have track changes turned on. You can insert comments. And then you can import this file back into MemoQ, and then the translation will be updated, and also the comments will be exported or imported. So this is a blend of the MemoQ way of working and the Microsoft Word way of working, and our experience says that proofreaders actually prefer working that way, although they might need to have a PDF export of the formatted document so that they can also see how and where each piece of text appears. The other way to go is the Trados bilingual document, and that could be good if you are translating Word documents, because it will preserve all formatting for you. But then that file format is very, very vulnerable. There are hidden markers there, and if a hidden marker gets deleted, for instance, by accidentally deleting an end of paragraph mark in Microsoft Word, MemoQ won't be able to import it anymore, because it will detect that the file is malformed, the document is malformed. So going back to where we were, and I had a question: is the creation of two-column RTF possible in freelance versions? In the Translator Pro, yes, it is. Yes, it is. You can work with all sorts of bilingual documents in the Translator Pro edition. Okay, but if you have done the proofreading outside MemoQ, you have a master project somewhere in your system. Either you work with a Translator Pro and you want to, and you have the project on your computer, or you work with a Project Management Edition and you were working with handoff packages, but that is the same story. Or you manage a project on a server. But anyhow, there was a work phase that was done outside MemoQ, and then you have a bilingual file that you need to get back into your master project. Even when it was an XLIF or an MBD file that you exported. Those are the ones that cannot be processed in Microsoft Word. But then there were rare cases. I wonder if you have already experienced those. I remember problems with updating XLIF files from version 4.2, not in version 4.5, but I don't see everything, of course. But if it won't update, you just create a new project with the same translation memories, you import documents, and export the documents and update the translation memory. And if you work with a 2-column RTF, you can also get your translation back into MemoQ, but that would be a bit more tricky because you need to create a temporary project with the same translation memory as your master project. You import the 2-column RTF, you update the translation memory, and because the 2-column RTF doesn't contain the formatting, the XLIF and the MBD files do. This is why it's easier that way. So when you work with a 2-column RTF, you have to return to the original master project and pre-translate the original document from the updated translation memory. And this is the reason for this is that you want to have the reviewed or proofread translation in the document where you also have the formatting, and that exists in your master project only. So this is why you need to return to your original project. And a very important part of this is that you shouldn't ever forget to update your translation memory. You have to make sure that the translation memory contains the proofread content and not the one that is returned by the translator, because that saves you a whole lot of work when you recycle, when you reuse those translations in later jobs. What's a temporary project? Well, a temporary project is just another MemoQ project. Just you create a new project that you use only to import these 2-column RTF files, and you update the translation memory, and then you, after the translation memory has been updated, you don't need the project any longer. So this is why it's temporary. There is no such term in MemoQ as a temporary project. You create another local project, but it is temporary from your point of view. No, it wouldn't be an extra option. You can, well, like if I have a temporary project, I update my translation memory and I delete the project so that it doesn't appear on my list and doesn't disturb my my regular or authoritative list of jobs, so to say. And there's another problem that many translation jobs have, that the proofreading is done in the final export. Like the document gets exported to, well, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, InDesign, HTML, whatever. And the proofreading is done in the final formatted version of the document. That document, with the exception of the bilingual doc files, cannot be bilingual. I have never seen such a thing as a bilingual INX or InDesign file or bilingual HTML file or the like. So in that case, it is tricky to update your translation memory because proofreading happens when the translation left MemoQ and the proofread version doesn't return to MemoQ unless you make it return to MemoQ. So this is why you might want to consider using a live docs corpus. Oh my, yes, there are a whole lot of corpora on the server. Okay, I turn to the resource console because my project has Latin in it as a language, and yes, MemoQ documentation. So you might want to use a live docs corpus for each of your translation projects. Well, you don't need a different live docs corpus for each project. You might want to set up one by client or one by topic, whatever. The point is that there must be a place where you can insert aligned documents, because if the proofreading happens after the MemoQ cycle in the final exported form, then all that you have is the source document and the final proofread document, and your translation memories weren't updated. And in that case, you can add an alignment, add the two documents as alignment pair in the live docs corpus, and then you can reuse them, reuse the translation right away. In earlier times, well, that presentation that I'm showing you dates back to August, where we didn't have version 4.5 yet, and what we had is the alignment functionality in MemoQ, where you had to import the two documents, review the alignment, and then export the contents in a translation memory. With the live docs corpus, it's easier, because all you need to do is import the documents, MemoQ aligns them immediately, and then you can have matches from that corpus as if it were a translation memory. You might have heard of it, and we have a separate webinar on that too. But this is something that you might want to do for each of your projects when the proofreading happens after the document left MemoQ. So this is really important. And some final remarks here. Well, first, it is advisable to keep versions. There are many reasons for that. You can use it to provide feedback, translators with feedback. You can you can use that to recreate your translation memories. You can use that to roll back your, if something went wrong during reviewing or proofreading, you can return to the earlier version of each document. You can even export the documents in the final formatted format before the project is finished, because this is something that you can do in MemoQ anytime, and MemoQ will allow you to touch the documents after they were exported, so you can export a document 100 times if you like. So this is really important for your safety. And what we also introduced in, well, both in Kilgrey and the publishing company, is a version control system. Now, what I am advertising here is a free version control system called Subversion, which could be familiar to those who are involved with program code, because it's mostly used by programmers to keep track of the different versions of their software, of the source code of their products. But it proved to be an excellent way of keeping records. So if you don't have a specific content management system to store your translations in, I recommend you to use that. For instance, this system, the screenshot that I'm showing you here in this slide shows the history of one single PowerPoint file that I have modified 4 times and saved at the same location. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as the documents folder on my computer is concerned, I've got one copy of this file, but still, because it's under version control, I could right-click the document and access the history of it. And then I can, and it's not only about seeing an entry, a log entry about the history, but I can open up in PowerPoint, I can open up any stage of this document. And the same goes with any other file types, like I could have MBD or XLIF files or 2-column RTFs here. So this way you can, for instance, you can always overwrite exported files, and you will still have access to the history of those files. You will still be able to restore earlier versions of those files. So this is something that I strongly recommend you to look into if you run an agency, or if you have a lot of jobs, you work together with others, you have a web server, and you need some sensible method to keep track of your files, your project files. So basically, that's it for today. And I await your questions, both during the presentation. Well, we still have 13 minutes of the allotted time, and both after the presentation. But while I'm waiting for questions, I'm also launching a poll, but first I'm going to answer the questions that I have just received. I still didn't get the difference between LiveDocs alignment and regular alignment. Well, it's LiveDocs alignment is regular alignment, but done in a non-conventional way. You don't have any other type of alignment in version 4.5, so if you want to align two documents in version 4.5 of MemoQ, you have to create a LiveDocs corpus and import the alignment pair there. But conventional alignment involves taking two files and opening them up in an alignment editor, like in Trados WinAlign or earlier versions of MemoQ. And then you have to confirm all alignment links. You can do it in one go if you don't have concerns about the quality of the alignment. And then you have to export the results of the alignment into a translation memory. Now, that is what I call conventional. While the approach we have in LiveDocs is different. You can access the contents of the aligned documents right after they were imported. So you don't have to review the entire alignment. You don't have to spend time with that before starting to recycle the translations in the aligned documents. You can do so if you like, but you don't have to. And you get the matches, just like from a translation memory, right away. And if you spot a misalignment somewhere, you just right-click the match that looks like a TM match, and then MemoQ will jump into the alignment editor and show you the segment that was involved in the match, and then you can correct that instance of misalignment. So you don't have to review all of those up front. It doesn't take your time. Okay, I hope that was an answer. Yeah, another question. Could you explain the version control again, please? Does it work with Translator Pro? Well, actually, the version control system I was mentioning here has nothing to do with MemoQ. It works with any file system. It works in my well, like let me go into. Okay, I'm going to give you larger icons here, so that you can see the tick marks next to the folder icons here on my screen. Like I go into collaterals and presentations, where today's presentation is. Okay, no, okay, this is where I go. And this means that these files and these folders are under version control. This has nothing to do with MemoQ, but in MemoQ I'm using files just as well. Like if you have a MemoQ project that also has a folder and some files, and you can put that under version control. That happens completely outside MemoQ. The system is called Subversion. You will need a server for that. So this is interesting for organizations or work groups that actually already use a server like this. The core of the version control system runs on our web server. So this is good for companies. There is no such thing as version control within MemoQ as of today. I'm not talking about the future, and I'm not entitled to mention specifics here. Yeah, the version control is a third-party software that we use not only for MemoQ projects but all kinds of documents. It's called Subversion. Okay, while we are waiting for further questions, I'm going to launch another poll here, and you also have 30 seconds to choose your answer here. And of course, you can ask more questions during that. Okay, that was another question. So what is version control? Some type of third-party software? I believe that I already said yes, but it's not sure. So yeah, it's a third-party software that we use, and not only for MemoQ, but also for all kinds of files. For instance, my presentation PowerPoints are under version control here on my computer. And above that. All right. Okay, I've skipped that. Sorry. In LiveDocs, is there a way to have specific metadata for each aligned pair so it shows in the editing screen where there is a hit during the translation project? Well, what you can have in what you can have is, let me just show this to you, is keywords. So there are no structured metadata here, but you can, whatever you import in a LiveDocs corpus, like a bilingual document or an alignment pair or a monolingual document even, you can set up keywords for them. And those show up, and you can use them to filter these. And it, as far as I know, when you have a match from a LiveDocs corpus, the keywords are displayed on the right bottom right corner of the MemoQ window. Sorry for that. Sure. But remember, you need a server for that. Or well, I think you can run that on your machine, but you need expert help to install it. So this is what I was saying, that it's mostly useful for companies. But here we go. Okay, let me just open the chat window. I'm inserting the URL in the chat window, and you can see the this is an open source project. We use it because we were one of our developers was very fond of it, and we have tried to use it for record keeping. It was quite well. We had a system operator to install it, but then it was quite easy to learn for each of us. So even members of the sales team are using it. Okay, there was one more question. What do you plan for March as far as webinars are concerned? Well, my short answer is that I don't know yet. I'm sorry, I'm not the one responsible, but we've got a webinars page on the QGray website, and there you have a webinar calendar. Now the March webinars are not published yet, as you can see, but I'm going to ask our marketing department to publish that as soon as possible, and please visit this page again in a couple of days. And is my understanding right that apart from Translator Pro, there's a project manager version of MemoQ? Yes, your understanding is right. You don't usually advertise it very much because it usually goes together with server packages. However, if somebody, for instance, as a freelancer, works with a group of translators and they prefer to work in an offline teamwork situation, working with handoff packages and delivery packages, it could be possible, but you will have to ask for a quotation from sales@qgray.com because the prices are not published for that. Is this webinar being recorded? If so, will it be posted on the website? Yes, yes to both questions. So I hope you can revisit that. And if if I happen to show the webinar, the website of QGray, I can show where these webinars are. So you go to the resource center of the QGray website, and there you go to the recorded webinars. And there are a lot recorded, like, I don't know how many, like 20 or something like that. You will have to register at the website before you can view them, but that is something like 30 seconds again. So thank you very much for attending today, and I hope we will meet soon at a different webinar or a similar one, and I wish you all a great evening, a great afternoon, or if you are hailing from America, I wish you a great day. And thank you very much for attending today. And well, see you soon at another webinar.